we will discuss the calcium channel blockers. That is the important. Calcium channel blocker has no mortality benefit, okay, but as we discussed that beta blockers have mortality benefit in our patients. So calcium channel blockers has no mortality benefit, and we have two types of the calcium channel blockers: nor dihydropyridines, nor dihydropyridines and dihydropyridines. So I keep remember these names about and these classes of these drugs by remembering it that NOR means those agents who will not control the blood pressure. So there are obviously two calcium channel blockers who are rate limiting and cannot control the blood pressure are verapamil and diltiazem. So just remember the names of these drugs by using NOR. NOR means noradihydropyridine. Uh, I have made a mnemonic for it. Like I have, I just keep remember of these two names that if they are nor dihydropyridine are those actually calcium channel blockers who cannot control the blood pressure. So there are two noradihydropyridines who actually there are two calcium channel blockers who cannot control the blood pressure, because you cannot give verapamil or diltiazem to control the blood pressure, but because these are the rate limiting channels, and dihydropyridines are those who can actually control the blood pressure. So I just remember these names like this, okay. So you have here you have amlodipine, because you know that amlodipine controls the blood pressure. And what else we have in our dihydropyridines? I just nifedipine and feldopamine. So just remember the one name, that is the amlodipine. Amlodipine has some role to be given in your heart patients, but these actually drugs are relatively contraindicated in the heart patient because it has so many other effects, like they causes the recurrent or rebound tachycardias because of vasodilatory effects. That's why, okay. So these both are the calcium channel blockers. Noradihydropyridines are those who cannot control the blood pressure. So verapamil and diltiazem and dihydropyridines who actually control the blood pressure. Yes, but now you can use these drugs accordingly. Like if you want to control the drug and you cannot give the beta blockers because of any contraindication, then you can control the heart rate of the patient with calcium channel blockers such as the diltiazem or verapamil. Most of the time we use the diltiazem. So yes, but if you want to control the blood pressure, then obviously you can use the amlodipine in your patients. So these are the calcium. Yes, but second thing, that these have already these calcium channel blockers can also be used as an anti-anginal, and they also decreases because if you are giving to control the rate, obviously then they would decrease the rate, increase the end diastolic period, and increase the flow in coronaries. So and it also decreases the demand. So it what they are doing by reducing the rate, they are actually decreasing the demand of the heart and increasing the supply of the heart. So obviously, as we discussed earlier, that in stable ischemic heart disease, most of the time the patient has symptom because of the increased demand and decreased supply. So actually they are solving the problem of decreased demand and increased supply, okay. Decreased supply and increased demand. So that's why they are beneficial, and you can give those as an anti-anginal agent as well. If your patient has chest pain, irrespective or despite of giving all anti-anginal medication, you can use it as a anti-anginal medication. And it is class 2 actually to use the calcium channel blockers with beta blocker. If your patient has persistently high rate and you have given the maximum beta blocker, then you can give the calcium channel blocker to control the rate, one thing, and to control the symptom, second thing, okay. Now what is we have here we have like So there are so many side effects of the calcium channel blockers, as these are almost same as with the drug. Few are different. I don't think so that these are that important to discuss, because we have a lot of important stuff to discuss. Now, what is the role of AC inhibitor? AC inhibitor, as we discussed that HOPE trial in STEMI and the non-STEMI, that if your patient has stable CKD like stage 4 stable, okay, and second thing is up to the 4, and second is diabetes, hypertension, and low EF, reduced EF, okay, and with the history of MI, then you obviously then history of MI, like history of big MI, then you can give this AC inhibitor. In ACS and STEMI, with all these things, it is class 1 to start the AC inhibitor. And stable ischemic heart disease, if you again have these same situations, these same conditions with your patient, obviously then AC inhibitor is class 1 again. But if your patient has none, if your patient has nothing, like if your patient has no hypertension, no diabetes, no CKD, no low EF, and your patient have just stable ischemic heart disease with no history of MI, nothing else, then AC inhibitors are actually class 2B to start in your patients, because it has no mortality benefit if your patient has no these conditions in stable ischemic heart disease. So AC inhibitors has a mortality benefit only the reduced EF and with the following situations which I have written here. So it is very important. And what was the trial who actually who was done on the stable ischemic heart disease? That was the PEACE trial. PEACE trial showed that it has no mortality benefit, and it is actually negative to give the ARB or ACE, and the PEACE trial was done on the tendrapril. Okay, and it told us that PEACE trial told us that if you are using the AC inhibitor or ARB without these conditions in stable ischemic heart disease, so it is a no mortality benefit on your patients. Now come to the hormone replacement therapy. If your patient is postmenopausal, as we discussed that in the postmenopausal man, sorry, in postmenopausal, women and men have equal risk and same risk of developing the coronary artery disease. So few trials were done on the postmenopausal women with the hormone replacement therapy. They were just looking for the mortality benefit and any benefit if the woman would have if we will use these hormone replacement therapy in them. But HERS trial, remain the woman by HERS trial told us that there is no mortality benefit but no benefit. So it is actually class 3 to use the hormone replacement therapy in postmenopausal patients by as a primary prevention of developing of the primary prevention of coronary artery disease, for the primary prevention of coronary artery disease. Okay, again the antioxidants such as the vitamin E, all these things, these are again class 3 to use in stable ischemic heart disease for the prevention of coronary artery disease. So now come to ranolazine. Ranolazine is actually very good drug. They work on like funny channels, and it is very good anti-anginal medication as well. Anti-anginal. Sometimes ranolazine is used also for as an anti-arrhythmic drug in long QT syndromes, okay, because it works on the sodium channel, and in the long QT3 it has actually has a problem with the sodium funny channel, so that's why you can use it. This is also anti-arrhythmic, and we use it in long QT syndromes as an anti-arrhythmic drug, but here we discuss it as an anti-anginal drug. So it is actually very good medications, but it has a no mortality benefit. You just use this ranolazine as an anti-anginal patient if your patient has a is persistently complaining for the chest pain, so you need to add another as an anti-anginal drug. Then the positive trial to support these are the Merlin, Timi 36, Charisma, also Erica, Carissa, Marisa, and Erica. Those were the actually trials who were done on the ranolazine, and all trials were positive. But all of them, none of them showed actually mortality benefit in our patients. Okay, so we use these ranolazine medication as an anti-anginal drug in our patients, and other things such as enhanced counter pulsation, EECP. It is actually external intra-aortic balloon pump. What it actually does, that in patient we use the external counter pulsation by using a device, EECP, and what does it stand for is actually enhanced external counter pulsation. It actually gives pressure in the peripheral arteries to give to increasing the flow in the coronaries. So it actually works as an external intra-aortic balloon pump because it actually gives the flow in the diastole to the patients. So but it is class 2B to use in the patient, and routine usage of this is class 3. So no need to discuss or remember these things. So just remember the name and how it what is the mechanism of this EECP, because it is actually non-practical to use this, and we cannot and we do not use these nowadays. Now the important thing is that it has been a long discussion for so many years, like decades, for last 10 years or 12 years, that in stable ischemic heart disease which thing is preferable, intervention or not, or no intervention. So obviously this thing will be clear in inshallah our guidelines discussion. We will do the guidelines inshallah after this, so we will discuss it, but here we need to prove it, and we need to discuss it, that which trials actually support the medical therapy, and which trials actually guide us to go for the intervention in our patient, and which intervention is actually preferable, PCI or CABG. So PCI, CABG, medical therapy. Okay, so and the name of trial. So first of all, a very old trial, ACM. There was a trial. It showed no mortality benefit in PCI. It is negative for PCI and it was positive for the medical therapy. It was actually very old trial, and there was nothing about CABG because CABG was not in the race. Okay. Then again second trial came in the fight between medicine and the primary PCI. It was done between the medicine and the primary PCI, and it again showed that the medical therapy is preferable and it should be done in the patient because it showed no mortality benefit with the PCI, doing PCI with the stable ischemic heart disease patient. Again then trial came with RITA 2. There was a trial in ischemia as well. We discussed it. That was a RITA, but that was RITA 1. That is the RITA 2 actually, which we are discussing here. It again showed what? It showed no mortality benefit with the PCI and no benefit with the PCI win, but there was the positive response and positive conclusion or results coming from the RITA trial with the medical therapy. So the very important trial in the history of stable ischemic heart disease was Courage. It gave courage to the physician to keep your patients on medical therapy. It was positive for the medical therapy and it was negative for the PCI, and that was the important and the big trial in the history, that it actually convinced it actually gave courage to the physicians to keep your patients on the medical therapy and just to neglect the PCI in stable ischemic heart disease patient, because we discussed it in our previous lecture that stable ischemic heart disease, it has a separate sort of pathophysiology because their plaques are sort of very stable and they have a very thick fibrous capsule, so that's why it would not get ruptured very easily. That's why you can keep your patients on medical therapy. What else we have here is ischemia trial. Ischemia trial is not that older one trial. We have a very 2 or 3 variants of ischemia trial. The recently ischemia trial came from the from ESC, and that was a multi-center trial. It also showed that there is no mortality benefit with the PCI, but it is better to continue the medical medical treatment in your stable ischemic heart disease. And this ischemia trial told that you can do the PCI, but with one condition: ischemia guided. Ischemia guided means you need to go for the non-invasive investigation, and if on non-invasive investigation, if your patient has high risk feature, then you can go for the PCI, but if not, then you need to keep your patients on medical therapy. So ischemia trial was bit positive with the PCI, but that was ischemia guided. That was not directly yet. It means you cannot do the medical therapy in stable ischemic. You cannot do the PCI straightforwardly in the stable ischemic heart disease patients. Okay. So what else we have is a FAME2 trial. That is the important trial again. FAME trial. Okay. FAME2, and FAME2 trial again showed the benefit, mortality benefit, but again it has given one indication that you need to do the what, FFR. That PCI would be FFR guided. FFR guided, like if your patient has a reserve flow, it is less than 0.8, then you need to go for the PCI in your patient of the stable ischemic heart disease. Otherwise, you need to go for the medical therapy. So those were the trial. Actually, these trials and in these trials there were the competition between medical therapy and PCI. So obviously medical therapy won over PCI, and in medical therapy versus PCI, medical therapy became the winner. Okay, in these trials. Now we will discuss about medical therapy and CABG. Medical therapy and CABG in stable ischemic heart disease. So there are few trials. Now see that what they told us. The EAST trial. There is a very strong data in stable ischemic heart disease that if your patient is diabetic and with especially diabetic, then obviously their stable ischemic heart disease would not be that stable that with the comparison of other stable ischemic heart disease patients. That's why it is better to go for the CABG but not the PCI. Okay, so EAST again showed that there is a benefit in the patient of doing the CABG if your patient is with diabetes. So that was an indication that there was a group of diabetic patients which showed the mortality benefit while doing the CABG in stable ischemic heart disease patient. Otherwise, you have to keep your patient on the medical therapy. So this was plus minus. Okay. So in this fight, in this competition, medical therapy versus CABG won over the medical therapy if their patients have, and if your patients have diabetes. And again, very famous trial came here. That was a BARI and BARI 2D. BARI 2D was a limb of and another subgroup of BARI trial, and that it again showed that it is a mortality benefit of doing the CABG in the diabetic patients. So data is again and again coming with the medical versus CABG in stable ischemic heart disease, and again it showed that repetitively in so many trials it showed that the CABG has benefit in the diabetic patients in stable ischemic heart disease. So and other trials we have, like, and the very important trial who gave us hope to do the PCI in our patients, and those were the trials we will discuss later on. But Syntax trial, Syntax trial gave us a syntax score. Actually, they told us that calculate the syntax score if your patient has a syntax of more than 32, then go for CABG. If less than 32, then go for medical therapy. So syntax actually gave us a hope to do the PCI in our patients. If their syntax score is like less than 32, then you can go for the sorry, syntax score actually gave the hope for PCI. So it told us that if it is less than 32, then it is better to do the PCI in your patients rather medical therapy or CABG. So you can do the actually CABG, PCI in your patient with a stable ischemic heart disease if they have a syntax score of less than 32. But if they have a syntax score of more than 32, then you need to go for the CABG in your stable ischemic heart disease. So see, look at here, look at this, that syntax score the important. Then we need to calculate the syntax score of our each patient who are going to be discussed in the heart team. Okay, so we need to calculate the syntax score to tell or to present our case in a better position to with the surgeon and the interventional cardiologist, that and that would be more easier for them to for them to decide about our patient to do CABG or PCI. So you can easily decide about your patient or which about the suitability of the intervention which should be done on your patient, that if they have a syntax score of less than 32 or more than 32. Now again, after few years, an aggressive trial came with the name of Freedom trial. Freedom trial told us that either what would be the syntax score, it is better to go CABG. You can go for PCI, but there would be more benefit if your patient would if you will do CABG in your patient with a stable ischemic heart disease. So, and again one more trial came, and it has give us a more hope to do the PCI in our patient, and that trial was Excel trial. Excel, then that is the important trial, very important trial, Excel trial. It told us that you can do your PCI in your patient if your left main is unprotected. So Noble Excel trial actually and because of the Excel trial, this became the recommendation in our guidelines, in the guidelines of stable ischemic heart disease, that you can go for the PCI in unprotected left main, and a guideline recommended it as a class 2 indication to do the PCI in the unprotected left main, which was actually the data which was showed by, or which was given by the Excel trial. Okay, yes, you can do the left main unprotected, but their syntax score should be less than 32. That is the important thing. Syntax score should be less than 32, and if the left main is unprotected, then you can do the PCI, and this thing told by Excel trial. Okay, if your syntax score is more than 32, then obviously you will go for the CABG for your left main. Okay, and what is the definition of the unprotected left main? Unprotected left main means this is the left main actually giving circ and LAD. So left main unprotected means if none of graft has been implanted at any territory of left circumflux and left and ascending left and LAD or left anterior descending artery. So this is actually unprotected. If none of graft is implanted here or here, it means if your patient has not gone for the CABG previously and none of the graft is placed on LAD, territory of LAD on left circumflux, it means your left main is unprotected. Okay, unprotected. So in unprotected left main, you can do the PCI Excel trial told us, but there should be a syntax score of less than 32. So now came to the Nobel. Nobel trial again came with the aggressiveness of doing the cabbage, and it was negative for PCI and positive for cabbage. So Nobel trial was again the trial which told us that. Now we will discuss here little bit about the grafts, which graft should be done if there is a mortality benefit with the cabbage. So what would we do in the cabbage? So cabbage actually, but you have to go for the with cabbage in your patients, but there must be lima implanted in your patient. If you are not implanting or harvesting lima in your patients, so if or for any reason you cannot put the lima in your patients, so there is no indication to do the cabbage in the stable ischemic heart disease. Why? Because lima has the patency rate of the patency of like 20 years. In 80 to 90% patients have patent lima up to the 20 years, but the venous graft like 25% of the grafts on table became occlusive. That's why, that is the important reason. And on 5 years in venous, on 5 years 60 to 70% graft became occlusive or non-patent, and the maximum life of venous graft is 10 years. On 10 years up to 90% of the grafts become occlusive. Okay, so the patency, the life and the patency of the lima is actually good. That's why if you are putting lima, harvesting lima in your patient with stable ischemic heart disease, then it's class 1 to go for it. But if you are not going for it, or if there is any contraindication, or there is any condition in which you cannot do the cabbage with lima, then you cannot you should not go for cabbage in your stable ischemic heart disease patient. So that's why there are so many factors, and I think I because I am very short of time, that's why I don't want to discuss that why lima is better and all these things. Obviously there are other arterial graft as well. We have a rima, right internal memory artery, lima and radial artery, but the best one is always lima because of its age. Rima and the this radial artery has no benefit because there are a lot of factors for it, and I don't want to discuss over here. So what is a hybrid cabbage? Hybrid cabbage is cabbage in which you obviously you need to, what is a hybrid cabbage? Hybrid cabbage in which you have to do the PCI plus cabbage. So now question arises here that should we do the cabbage first or PCI first? So yes, you need to do the cabbage first, because if you will do the PCI and you will put a stent in those patients, then you need to keep your patients on the clopidogrel, and with the clopidogrel or any P2Y12 inhibitor. So actually in stable ischemic heart disease, obviously clopidogrel, you cannot give any other P2Y12 inhibitor in stable ischemic heart disease. So if you obviously you have done the PCI first, not cabbage, then obviously you need to keep your patients on clopidogrel. Then obviously you have to stop the clopidogrel 5 days before the cabbage, and you cannot stop the clopidogrel in the stable ischemic heart disease patient. So that's why we actually do the cabbage first and then the PCI. Okay, so these are the things actually. Now what are the hospital discharge or other indications for your stable ischemic heart disease patients? Like you need to advise the, obviously stable ischemic heart disease patient won't get admitted, won't get admission in the hospitals, but they are coming to the clinics. So you need to tell them that you have to do the walk of actually you have to told them they have to do the walk 75 minutes if they are in week, if they are doing jogging or running, and 150 minutes if they are doing brisk walk per week. So they have to divide it in a days according to their routine, according to their suitability. They do the walk 5 days a week, 4 days a week, so they can do accordingly. One thing is that And what else you will advise, that they should not do the isometric exercise. Isometric exercise actually increases the oxygen demand and decreases the output. That's why it actually worsens the ischemia in the heart. But you will advise your patients to do the isotonic exercises. Okay, so that's why you will advise them that they have to do the isotonic. Okay, isotonic exercise, because exercises increases the output and does not increase oxygen demand. They will not increase the oxygen demand. So what are the exercises which actually come in the domain of isotonic? They are walking, light, any activity, or and isometric exercises are those exercises which you do in like weightlifting and anything which actually gives the exertion and increasing the oxygen demand. Okay, so what are the other factors you need to do or tell your patients as a lifestyle modification in the stable ischemic heart disease? That you advise your patients Mediterranean diets. Mediterranean diet has what? Mediterranean diet has high nuts and pulses, low greasy food, okay, normal quantity of salt, green leafy vegetables, fruits, fresh fruit. So you would advise your patients as the Mediterranean diet. Okay, and if your patient has the symptoms of depression and all these things, and then obviously you need to correct those one, because it has a poor effect on our heart patients. So we have done the stable ischemia here, we have completed here. I hope that you will learn a lot from this lecture. Pray for me, subscribe my channel, press the bell button to my for the future videos and the future updates from me, and pray for me that the task which I have started here, and the goal which I have set for you guys and for me guys, that my Allah will make me able to complete that goal. Thank you. Allah Hafiz. Take care. God bless you. Fi Amanullah.